Welcome to the meeting, everyone. My name is Josh Quintero with the City of Lynchburg Communications and Public Engagement Department. The city is pleased to release the draft of the Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley Neighborhood Plan. The draft plan includes recommendations for recreation improvements for parks and trails, neighborhood gateway enhancements, as well as quality of life improvements in the neighborhood. Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley Neighborhood Plan is a product of the input received from neighborhood residents, citizen members of the Project Steering Committee, City of Lynchburg staff, and the consultant firm Hill Studio, working together to envision opportunities for sustainable growth in the neighborhood. The plan has been developed under the direction established by the city's comprehensive plan to build strong neighborhoods, conserve the city's unique places and resources, promote business vitality, enhance the attractiveness of gateways and travel corridors, and protect the natural environment, while also promoting sensitive development and redevelopment. To achieve this vision, the Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley Neighborhood Plan is to be adopted as a supplement to the Comprehensive Plan 2013 through 2030. As such, it reinforces and extends its goals and policies. So first, let's look at the agenda for tonight's meeting. I'll introduce our panelists. They will review the draft plan. We'll take some questions and finally talk about next steps. We encourage you to type questions or feedback at any time. There will be a time for questions at the end, and feedback will be collected from the chat to provide to the Planning Commission. We also have staff trying to monitor questions coming in on both Facebook and the Zoom webinar, and we'll do our best to address those. So let me introduce our panelists tonight. Our first panelist is Josephine Arbaugh. She's the project manager and planner at Hill Studio. Josephine has over 14 years of professional experience working on national and international projects in various market sectors, including government, healthcare, higher education, residential, and community. She has participated in several planning efforts, as well as urban design and community-based projects. Her approach to architecture and planning focuses on cultural, environmental, and social impact design, as well as the development of sustainable communities. Over the past few years, Josephine has led innovative community engagement efforts using design thinking as a way to foster a more inclusive planning process. Our second panelist is Rachel Fresheisen. Rachel is a planner for the City of Lynchburg who is passionate about placemaking for the entire community. After receiving her bachelor's degree in geographic science from James Madison University, Rachel returned home to start her career with the city as a GIS specialist before shifting focus to urban planning. She believes in bringing data analysis and mapping together with the art and science of planning to create great spaces where people truly want to be. Rachel and Josephine, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Josh, for that welcome and introduction. I want to thank everyone who's tuning in from home to the Zoom and Facebook and on the city's local TV channel as well. We're excited to be with you tonight and to present this plan. First, I thought we would talk about a little background, basically why we think it's needed, the planning process that got us to this point, as well as what was gathered during the input phase. So as Josh was saying, the city's comprehensive plan is a guiding document for the future of Lynchburg as a whole. In the plan, we established many goals and recommendations in order to achieve the established vision to make Lynchburg a great place to live, work, and play. In addition to the citywide plan, we also have these smaller area plans, which have more specific recommendations for neighborhoods. So that's what we're discussing tonight, is one of those more specific plans, which builds on the specific goals set out in the comprehensive plan of building strong neighborhoods, conserving unique places and resources, business vitality, attractiveness of gateways and corridors, and protecting the natural environment while promoting sensitive development and redevelopment. This is also a good time to be doing this plan because we have other plans in the works in other various departments, such as the Department of Parks and Recreation, which is currently in the process of creating their master plan, as well as the Department of Water Resources, which is currently developing a citywide master plan for unsewered areas within the city, including this neighborhood. And growth in general. Development in Lynchburg is expected to continue, particularly in nearby downtown. And given the limited amount of developable land and Lynchburg's challenging topography, continued growth must occur through infill development of vacant land or redevelopment in surrounding areas. And that includes the Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley neighborhood. As development pressures increase, this neighborhood will likely see change. A number of residents throughout this process indicated to us that they enjoy their neighborhood's rural character, but we know change is bound to happen, at least to some degree. So this plan attempts to find a balance between preserving that character and also allowing progress in a way that meets the needs of the residents and improves quality of life. So a little bit of planning process. In 2019, way back in 2019, a steering committee was formed and we met to outline the larger concerns from the neighborhood. And once we had those general issues, we used that to structure a neighborhood workshop, which was held at Pleasant Valley Baptist Church. Right as we were getting ready to release the plan to you, COVID hit. And that really slowed the momentum. It changed the way we had to do things. Historically, in-person meetings have always been our preferred way that we communicate with the community on these projects, having that face-to-face connections. So I just want to take the opportunity again to say thank you for everyone who's been involved up to this point, to the church for hosting us, to the attendees, to everyone else we've met with so far, and for you being here tonight. So we learned a lot during that initial public input. There were a few examples of the bigger themes that we heard from the neighborhood. We learned a lot from the residents about the community's history, including Pleasant Valley, the Meganson Homestead at School, the Tyree Plantation. In terms of land use, we heard about the need for a multi-generational community that can accommodate people in various ages and stages of life. That includes aging populations as well as welcoming new families. One concern is the lack of public gathering space and recreation for neighbors to enjoy. We also heard some about mobility. There are really no facilities at this time for safe walking and biking in the neighborhood. And currently there's really no option for travel other than in your car. Traffic speeds were also concerning to residents. And when it comes to maintenance, appearance, and general aesthetics, we've heard that over the years, some things have gotten better, such as the odor from the wastewater treatment plant, which has been somewhat reduced due to new technology and a shift in practices. And some things have become more of a concern for residents, such as overall appearance of the neighborhood and cleanliness in general. So based on this neighborhood feedback, these principles were formed. I think they're simple, but they speak for themselves. Ensure that the neighborhood is a great place to live, enhance its natural resources, celebrate its history, make the neighborhood a multi-generational community, and improve connections to and within Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley. From these principles, we get our vision statement. And just to summarize, we want to maintain natural beauty and rural character while growing economically in strategic locations, housing market with a variety of options for different populations and ages, with a focus on neighborhood and community. Another focus on recreation opportunities, neighborhood services, and a strong sense of community. And through better access, community spaces, and strategic growth, the neighborhood should strengthen its own identity while defining its place in the city as a whole.
Thank you, Rachel, for that background. And thank you, Josh, for the introduction. So I'm Josephine, and I would like to share with you now an overview of the draft plan. And like Rachel said, thank you so much for everybody that's been involved. This has been a true effort, taking everybody in collaboration in everybody's concerns. So more than a vision, the Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley neighborhood plan is a toolkit. It's like a toolkit that will guide the neighborhood towards a sustainable development. The plan aligns with the principles identified during the planning process, as Rachel shared, and defines those policies, projects, and initiatives that will help residents meet their community goals. The topics that will cover in the plan include future land use, connectivity and neighborhood design, parks and open space, and historic resources. It also includes a broader consideration towards how we move forward and a path towards implementation. So while all the recommendations of the plan are important in achieving the overall community vision, a few of them were identified as high priority initiatives because of their strong potential to catalyze revitalization and promote the sustainable growth that the neighborhood is looking. So one is define an identity for the neighborhood that builds upon its history and assets. Establish an urban design palette that reflects the neighborhood's identity into the built environment. Designate a neighborhood commercial area for neighborhood residents. Develop a greenway system. Clean up brownfield sites. Transform the landfill into an attractive public outdoor destination. Protect historic sites from development. Foster the development of housing types for diverse demographic groups, young families, and all population groups. Develop a streetscape plan for complete streets that keep safe, that improve the safety of pedestrians, vehicles, and bicycle riders. Design and install city and neighborhood gateways. Next, please. So we heard that the community wants more open spaces. We know that parks and recreational areas are important land uses for any community because they promote physical and psychological health for citizens. They strengthen the social fabric of a community and makes a neighborhood a more attractive place to live and work. While there is a lot of undeveloped land in Tyreeanna and the Pleasant Valley neighborhood, it lacks dedicated recreational and gathering spaces. Feedback from the residents during our planning process revealed that many of the households, particularly families with young children, often travel to other areas of the city to participate in outdoor activities. So we knew that the community wanted to see more dedicated parks, more dedicated green spaces, and not just that, but also have them accessible to all population groups. The former landfill now presents a significant recreational opportunity, not only for residents of the neighborhood, but also for the city at large. The concept that we proposed in the plan illustrates a range of activities and amenities that could be incorporated into a public park at the former landfill, taking into consideration that the site has some challenging natural and infrastructure characteristics. So in this particular concept, the access to the landfill park could be provided from the north side on the James River Parkway. This is a project that was proposed at the Downtown 2040 Master Plan effort, and we'll describe a little bit in the following slides. There's also an opportunity for a south entrance around Tyreeanna Road. There's opportunity for many amenities, as you see highlighted on the plan, from a dog park to a sculpture park to a multi-generational community center. There's many opportunities to create some activities and destinations in this area that is accessible from the neighborhood side as well as from downtown. Next slide, please. Now, the concept was proposed in the plan just to generate discussions, productive discussions between city officials in the community. I know it's hard to envision sometimes how a challenging site could become such a great asset, but case studies reveal that it is possible, and there's so many great uses that could happen at the site that would benefit everybody in the community, creating a better sense of place, given the community identity and connecting it more to other neighborhoods in the city. Next, please. In terms of housing, we know, as we heard from Rachel, that development pressures are making city officials think of different ways, effective ways to provide housing for city residents. Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley is one of the few areas in the city with open land suitable for potential development. Granted, we do have some challenges when it comes to infrastructure, but the opportunity is there. And as growth continues to put pressure at the core, it eventually would happen. And it's a matter of how prepared the community is going to be for those changes. The neighborhood also received a funding from the Environmental Protection Agency to address some of the remediation and assessment of brownfields. So this creates an opportunity for future funding. Demographic trends for the neighborhood also indicate that there is a significant aging population in the community. So those type of improvements when it comes to housing, when it comes to infrastructure, will be very important in order to ensure the livability of everybody, not just existing residents, but also new residents, younger families, as we heard from the community. The future land use map identifies residential blocks between Tyreeanna Road and the southeast boundary of the neighborhood that would change from low density to a medium density residential designation. This creates opportunities for other housing options in the area that would still respect the character and the quality of life of the residents. By moving to a medium density residential, some options might include attached single family houses, duplexes, townhouses, etc. Some of these vacant properties in the neighborhood are city owned, so they do present opportunities for to explore housing options and concepts such as the pocket neighborhood concept shown on the slide. This type of concept is provides a variety of housing options that also allow for amenities to happen within the block. This particular example is on a city-owned vacant lot along Tyreeanna Road and Stratham Road. It illustrates 10 homes of about 1,000 square foot each, all facing a central green space. This is the area where the community can come together. Depending on the needs of the residents that are part of this pocket neighborhood, this central space could be a garden, it could be a community center, it could be a courtyard. It's just to improve the social interaction of the residents. Based on the case studies that we've seen and the examples, typically the residents have taken over the management, the caring, and the oversight of the space, of the central space. So we know that this type of concept promotes a sense of ownership and safety among residents. Next, please. Another key component that we've seen in vibrant communities have been a mix of land uses. That is placing residential, commercial, and recreational uses in close proximity. This encourages people to walk more, and bike more, and rely less on their vehicles. We know that that's something that is happening in the Tyreeanna community, where residents are relying on driving to have access to services and goods that are not provided in the neighborhood currently. So they're very limited. The future land use map does designate a couple of commercial, community commercial areas within the boundaries of the neighborhood. This plan proposes an extended commercial area or neighborhood hub, particularly near housing blocks, that would provide a pedestrian-friendly environment for residents and visitors, and will allow for the access of goods and services that are not currently provided. An example shown on the slide, it's at the corner of Concord Turnpike and Pleasant Valley Boulevard. This type of hub could provide a small scale retail area where businesses and services can meet the everyday needs of the residents without the need of getting into a car. So such businesses might include a restaurant, a coffee shop, a small store, and maybe some retail stores and pedestrian areas along Pleasant Valley Boulevard. Next, please. So an important aspect of the plan is connectivity. We heard that the community wants to feel more connected, not only within the neighborhood, but also to other neighborhoods. Tyreeanna is actually a very important, Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley neighborhood, there is an important connector and gateway for the city. While the community is rural in character, it also has a rich history, which has gone unrecognized in the past years. We also heard from the community that Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley feel or perceive as two very distinct areas in the community. So increasing the connection within the neighborhood would create a stronger sense of community moving forward, while also celebrating the character and the history of its residents. So the connectivity connections that we're going to see in the following slides focus on street infrastructure, improvements, and design strategies that address the needs of the residents and set the stage for future development. They focus primarily on improving the quality of life, enhance the appeal of resident areas, promote safety, and celebrate the community's history. In the slide here, we see the James River Parkway on the left side. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a project that was proposed as part of the Downtown 2040 Master Plan. It is a scenic route that will provide an alternative access from Route US 29, US 460 bypass into downtown. This future parkway will be a critical connection between the neighborhood and downtown. It will also accommodate vehicular traffic in a safe and efficient manner, while alleviating the traffic loads from Concord Turnpike, because we know that has been a concern. A key component of Concord Turnpike is also the jog handle. Currently, the intersection provides access to the north side of the neighborhood, but not to the south side. So reconnecting these two areas of the neighborhood would be critical. The plan does take a look at a couple options that address a bridge as well as level connections that would need further assessment as we continue to explore that option. Next, please. Finally, in terms of connecting the north side of the neighborhood to the south side, the plan looks at an extension of Holcomb Path Road through a multimodal bridge. This bridge would accommodate connections, whether they're pedestrian, vehicular, or from bicycle riders. So the design is proposed as a multi-lane with potential bike routes and sidewalks. And depending on the design of this bridge, it could also become an iconic element along this main thoroughfare that would create a gateway into the city and into the neighborhood. And to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Josephine. So in the vein of connectivity, let's talk about the greenway system that is proposed. So an important mobility element of this plan is a greenway system with dedicated pathways for pedestrians and cyclists. The long-term vision for the greenway is to build a continuous system that links destinations within Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley and connects to other areas of the city. The proposed route starts at the south edge of the neighborhood on the Holcomb Path Road across that bridge we just talked about, crosses over 460 and runs through the neighborhood to the east side of the river to link back to the James River Heritage Trail into downtown. The proposed greenway is 4 phases. One section of the greenway is shown on this slide with examples of placemaking elements that can be incorporated into the trail to make it almost more like a linear park when it's coming through this neighborhood. More of a park experience than simply a way to get from point A to point B, although you can do both. These elements can include community garden space, public art, play space, and interpretive signage for historic resources. Speaking of historic resources, so this neighborhood has a rich history that at least I did not realize. I think the whole team learned a lot about coming into this neighborhood. We, as Josephine mentioned, we went into it calling it the Tyreeanna plan, but through conversations with residents, we learned that many consider Tyreeanna and Pleasant Valley to be 2 separate areas. And while they do have distinct pasts, I think they can really complement each other and connect with each other without being blended together. We can recognize the differences and also make them sort of strengths as well. So the Pleasant Valley Historic Mile, this is a grassroots effort from the neighborhood to preserve important historic sites, including the Meganson School, which was established during Reconstruction. And some of these sites are located along or very close to the proposed greenway route. And so they can be incorporated into the design. We also learned about the Tyree plantation from where the Tyreeanna name presumably comes from. And also slightly outside of the neighborhood study area, the connection to downtown along Concord Turnpike contains some good examples of early industrial architecture that was important to Lynchburg's economy from the 1890s to 1850s. An expansion of that lower basin historic district was determined to be eligible for listing on the Virginia Landmarks Register and National Register as well. So the plan does recommend further protection for those built, or further opportunities, I should say, to be placed into the state and national historic district. This plan echoes and reinforces a number of specific strategies outlined in the city's blueprint for opportunity, which is a 5-year strategic action plan created by our Office of Economic Development and Tourism. The specific strategies include creating a placemaking strategy for downtown Lynchburg as well as the neighborhoods. And so one of the key recommendations in this plan, is you may recall that Josephine mentioned, is defining an identity for the neighborhood that builds upon its history and assets. Neighborhood identity is important not just for social and cultural benefits, but it also gives the community a firm foundation for what future development should look like. Another strategy is to create tourism experiences to drive visitor and tourism growth. And as discussed, there are several projects we've mentioned already in this plan that will benefit both neighbors as well as visitors, such as the gateway signage, the landfill park, and greenway system. And connectivity, we've also mentioned that just previously, mentioning specifically the Holcomb Path Bridge, the need for multimodal transportation options when possible. And lastly, develop the real estate, land, infrastructure, and incentive tools to support business expansion. Probably the most important piece there leads us into infrastructure. This is something we heard a lot about during our input phase. The need for sewer in this neighborhood. Fortunately, in one way, the lack of infrastructure has acted as sort of a land bank in the past, which has, on the negative side, has limited the growth. But on the other side, it's also preserved that rural character that a lot of the neighbors have come to love. There is a recommendation in the plan that the city explore sewer here. This is an ongoing conversation with our Department of Water Resources. That department is currently doing their master plan and recognizes the importance of getting sewer to these areas that currently are not served by it. And this neighborhood will be looked at along with the others in the city that currently don't have that service. The important thing to realize there is the potential for change that the possibility of sewer does bring. We talked about the rural character, and the sewer could open the door for a lot of change. And so that really underscores the importance of plans like these, to be sure that when change does happen, we are respecting and protecting the existing neighborhood, and also really highlighting the importance of that identity in guiding the development going forward. So in terms of implementation, we will be gathering this feedback that we collect in this chat and that we receive. If you have thoughts after this meeting, you're welcome to reach out. We'll be collecting feedback to present to our planning commission. There will be public hearings at City Hall in both December as well as January. So that next meeting is coming up on December 15th at 4 p.m. here at City Hall, as well as the meeting in January for City Council. Once the plan is adopted, we will be starting to look for funding sources for the priority projects. This is a large plan with a lot of big goals. These things don't get implemented overnight. We know that. But one of the most important purposes of this plan is that we need to have it in place before we start to seek funding. So Once we have this adopted, we'll know our priority recommendations and we'll start making informed decisions based on the needs identified in this plan. Some will be shorter term and others will be longer term. But it doesn't happen overnight, but some projects can be implemented sooner rather than later. And then once we get to that point, this is another chance for neighborhood involvement. These initiatives in the draft plans are very big picture. Nothing is set in stone. So once we get into figuring out the details of what exactly these projects look like, we'll need your help. So if you're interested in being involved, please reach out. So just to recap, these are the key recommendations that we went over at the beginning of the presentation. You see them on the right here. And if you feel inclined, if you feel excited about maybe your top 3, feel free to put those in the chat or in the Facebook chat if that's how you're joining us this evening. And this is also a good time for questions. If you have a question that you have not submitted yet, feel free to go ahead and type that in now.
All right, thank you, Rachel and Josephine. I wanted to go ahead and read some of the questions that have come through. Some questions from Facebook. Let's start out with this first one here. Is Holcomb Path in this plan?
It is. So I think that question probably came in before we covered the Holcomb Path Bridge, but it is very much a part of the plan. We heard a little bit about, when 460, when the bypass was constructed, that neighborhood was sort of cut off. I believe the median was closed right there. So it is difficult to access the south side of 460 from the north and vice versa. So the proposed bridge hopes to reconnect that piece back to the neighborhood. But yes, it's definitely included.
Great, thank you. Next question that came from Facebook. I'm going to assume this is a legitimate question, but it's from the wild world of Facebook. How about a motocross track?
All right, I'm going to guess that came in on the park slide. I think we are really focusing on very passive recreation for Tyreeanna Park. Because of the infrastructure constraints, it is a decommissioned landfill. It is capped underneath the soil, meaning we can't do a lot of building or putting a lot of weight on it. And also, taking residents into consideration, I don't know that they would love that idea being so close. But good suggestion.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your thoughtful answer to that Facebook question. Next question. Is Stratham with an R road supposed to be Statham Road?
Yes, it is. That must be a typo.
We apparently have lots of folks online looking out for us and our typos. So also from Facebook, where will the other side of the bridge connect?
So let me see if I could zoom in at all.
It will connect to the other side of you talk about Holcomb Path Bridge?
Yes, I believe they are.
That would connect to that same road.
Yeah, they didn't specify. Yeah, they didn't specify, so I'm assuming that's what they meant here.
Mm-hmm.
So it would connect Holcomb Path over 460 onto, I believe that's Tyreeanna Road, right where Rockwell Road comes in to Tyreeanna Road.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we do have a comment from Jenny Jones. She likes that the park portions of the plan are in there, advocating constantly for our parks, Ms. Jones. Here's one from our Zoom webinar. Has your team looked at the various funding programs to fund these projects strategically? And have you looked at what needs should be prioritized for short, mid, and long term?
So yes, we do have a funding mechanism table in the back of the plan, and where we kind of laid out potential funding sources. Of course, those are always subject to change, and we do have identified short, mid, and long-term goals. And that's another thing we're completely open to feedback on, and we're hoping, by asking what your top key recommendations are, we can kind of take that and apply that to the various initiatives to help determine the priority. But yes, that is definitely something we are thinking of already, in hopes to implement some of these things sooner rather than later, after the plan is adopted.
Great. And it looks like we have a list coming through from Ms. Jones again. Number one, a greenway or a play street. Number two, community park and community center. Three, a passive park. And four, tourism-driven component with tiny houses, which are popular, RV camping and tent camping. So I don't know if you want to speak to those, or if you want to talk about if those have come up, or if those are simply ideas from the floor here.
So I think a couple of those are identified as possibilities in the Tyreeanna Park graphic. But going forward, and as the project progresses, we're definitely open to hearing from both staff as well as the neighborhood, what things are most important to them. I also received a comment a couple of days ago from someone about the possibility of doing urban farmland in our proposed green spaces, whether that's the park or along the greenway. Those are possibilities as well.
And Ms. Jones follows up, says all four components are already included on the plan. So thank you very much for that. We don't have any more questions so far. So I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add, or if anything has come to mind as these questions have come through for either of you, either Josephine or Rachel.
Not really. I would like to touch on again on the fact that the way the plan has been designed with the design principles. So the recommendations and the plan will fall into each one of those principles. So people that look at the plan will be able to see how they're associated to the overall picture and vision for the community. And it also takes a look at, like Rachel mentioned, what are some of the ones that you would like to see short-term, mid-term, long-term? So I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting the community to speak up, share their thoughts as to what they would like, they envision, they would like to see more of, less of, and kind of fostering that communication with city officials would be important.
To that point, Rachel, is there a way that the community can give you input outside of these sessions, or do you want to go ahead and talk about those sessions that you are receiving input for?
Yeah, I was gonna mention as well. I see we've got a couple of people joining us late, and that's perfectly fine, because this webinar is being recorded. And so if you missed the first part, you will be able to catch the recording. I believe the recording will probably be on Facebook as well. If it's easier for you to watch on the city's Facebook page, you have access to it there. And yes, we definitely welcome any feedback between now and plan adoption. And the best way to do that would be to go to lynchburgva.gov/planning, and you can find the information there on how to submit feedback. And if you want to view the draft plan yet, if this very brief and quick synopsis of it is not whet your appetite, then you can dive into the whole document there. It's on the website. There's a couple of things that we didn't have time to cover, and there's obviously a lot more detail than we're able to communicate tonight. But I would definitely encourage you to visit the website and view it and submit feedback as it comes to you.
One one more comment came through. Appreciate that Rachel. One more comment came through from Miss Musgrave, who says, I would love to see the park as a priority. I have lived here most of my life, and we have been talking about it since I was a small child. My youngest is 10, and I would love to have my children realize what I was excited about as a child. So there's some historical and generational and some emotional connection to even these plans.
Wonderful.
All right, I looked at our list of attendees and I did not see any city council members to recognize, but I'm assuming that we'll keep them up to date. But with that, unless you have anything else, Rachel, I appreciate you joining us online on the webinar, and Josephine from Roanoke, I appreciate your time tonight. And with that, we'll close things out unless there are any other comments. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the time, Rachel and Josephine, that you have put to making this event, this presentation, as well as this information, very digestible and very informative. And if you have any other questions, again, like Rachel said, reach out to us on lynchburgva.gov and find our community development team. And you can send information to either Citizens First Information Center, give us a call, or find you can dig a little deeper and go to our community development staff, and they'll be able to get Rachel and Josephine the information that or questions that you may have. So with that, we'll sign off for this evening, and I appreciate everyone being here, all of our attendees being here, and our two panelists. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.